Okay. Okay, off we go. So this, I have to confess, this was quite a challenging class to. It's got me thinking, Sridharshini, like a week ago. It was my own fault. Any special requests. So which I think would be good. It would be good to get requests from you, because it does allows us to think about what we want to present and dig a bit deeper. So the question was a sequence to work the psoas and the quads. Okay. So I've only got so far with that material. So I did a bit of a dive, and I noticed what happens when you dive into YouTube. Well, I'm sure this has happened to you before. You just you can go down all sorts of avenues. So I came across this guy, which I shared with you in the group, which is a very basic explanation, just to get a sense of the psoas mainly there and the hip flexors. So I'm just going to mention what he says, and because I think it gives you something to work on. And then in terms of working with antagonists, it's basically the muscles which do the opposite action. So we'll be talking about the backs of the legs and the gluteals in terms of our work here, in working, as it were, opposite to the hip flexors. So we're going to be working around that area. And then what I realized looking at one guy was that, in terms of working with the body, it comes back to this issue of a holistic approach. So, I found one guy very interesting that was getting down to working very, very specific muscles with very kind of peculiar posture work, which is very interesting. So, you're trying to stretch just the iliacus. Okay, so I'll go into that in a minute. So I decided we're not going to go down that avenue, but that is really interesting. It's almost like physical therapy, I guess. So they're people that work with clients, I suppose, that are wanting to really train individual muscle groups. Whereas our approach is going to be a more general, working the whole system in a more sort of yogic fashion. So the sequence is quite interesting because it ended up being not unlike some of the work that we do with the yoga therapy. So there's going to be some strengthening work, and there's going to be some long stretches. So this guy that I posted today on the group, he was really emphasizing like long, sort of almost like yin-like stretches. So we'll do those more towards the end. So just to get just to have an image of where we're working. If you think about I'm just going to stand up here with the psoas is an interesting muscle because it's a deep muscle which runs off the back of the lower vertebra, even can go up into the last thoracic T12. It runs off the lumbar vertebra, it runs through the front of the pelvis, and then it kind of hooks onto the inside edge of the femur, the thigh bone. So when it contracts, it effectively lifts the leg in combination with the thigh muscles, quadriceps. And also at the same time, you've got this other muscle, which is always connected, called the iliacus. You've got the psoas running from front of the spine down to the front inner edge of the femur. And then you've got the iliacus coming off the crest of the pelvis, again on the inside, and connecting to the same area as the psoas. So the two work together, iliacus and psoas work together. In fact, he was saying that it's the same fascia, but wrap it all together. So they work together to basically lift the leg. That's one of their functions. Another one of their functions is to rotate the leg out. Okay. And it's a muscle that gets used a lot, primarily because it's a postural muscle, but it's a muscle we're just constantly using. It's one of these deeper postural muscles, the psoas. So it can get implicated in low back pain and so on. And one of the things I found quite interesting that he was talking about, why does it get short? Why does the psoas get short? And it comes back to this thing of sitting, So if you think about it, when we're sitting, we're sitting in maybe even a bit collapsed, So the psoas and the ilio-psoas are short. Okay, so they're in a slightly shortened position. So they just get, if you do this for hours and hours sitting like this, they just get accustomed to being short. So the idea is to lengthen them out. And the other reason he was suggesting is because we have slightly raised heels with our shoes, not necessarily high heels. So that tips the pelvis forwards, which again shortens the ilio-psoas. So if you think about it, with most shoes, any kind of shoe, the heel is lifted, so that tips the pelvis forwards. The buttocks go back, the chest opens out, so that shortens the front of this area, the front of the pelvis. Okay, so we're going to work at opening out all this area, and we're going to work the backs of the legs as well. So I didn't get to answer the question, why would you work the two together? So that we'll have to come back to that at some other point, or maybe Surya Darshini can answer it for me. Well, I didn't get that far. So I'd like you to have a strap, and we're going to need some bricks as well later on. So I've just got them off screen here. I would have you could have 2 cork bricks, or you could have 4 foam bricks. Really, it's to raise up the hands. And then a blanket might be useful just for protecting the knee. So one of the key poses for working psoas is the lunge. So we're going to look at the lunge. I mean, I did find people arguing against that on YouTube. You know, it's a whole world, isn't it, out there? But it's the most obvious posture to work the psoas is the lunge. Okay, but we're going to come to that later. So I'd like us to start off lying down, and do let me know if you can hear everything okay. And so it's interesting because I think this is something that's worth exploring in your own yoga, but there's a kind of science of stretching, which this guy is obviously drawing on. And you can bring that kind of scientific method into your yoga practice, which I think can be really interesting. Okay, so we're going to start lying down, and I'd like you to have a couple of bricks coming into the left buttock, into the left side of the hips. We're going to start off with some leg stretches to open up the back of the legs. So these are kind of the antagonists in relation to the hip flexors. So we'll start off in semi-supine. Having done that just brief introduction, I'd like you to rest back into your experience. So taking a few moments to feel the floor, feel the ground. And get a sense of your body this afternoon, or the middle of, wherever it is, the morning, middle of the day. I'm going to do a simple movement to connect with the breath and with the body. So allow you to float your knees towards you and bring one hand onto each knee and do Apanasana. So as we exhale, we float the knees towards us. As we inhale, we float the legs away. We're going to do this a few times, mainly as a way of connecting to our experience through the body. It's a gentle releasing movement for the lower back area, pelvis. You can make it very light, very soft way of mobilizing the lower spine area. As we exhale, floating the knees towards us. As we inhale, floating away. And as we come into the practice, also having a sense of our moods and how we are It's really important to have a sense of a kind regard, like you're looking into your body through kindness. So whatever's going on, bringing a sense of gentleness, kindness, warmth. Okay, so working with your body appropriately over the next hour or so. Okay, I'd like you to float your knees, your feet down, shall I say, and then we're going to take the strap across the left foot. This is a pretty standard leg stretch. So you start off with the knee bent towards you. And we're taking hold of the strap either side of the foot. I'm suggesting you've got some bricks or a cushion to your left side, because we're going to move into opening the pelvis out to the side here. Opening the leg out to the side, externally rotating. So as we exhale, we'll straighten, move towards a straight leg on the left side, engaging the thigh, opening the backs of the legs. So here we're working into the thigh area and lengthening the back of the body. So I'm going to play with that quite a bit. So I'm going to be lengthening the back of the body as well as opening the front of the body over the course of this sequence. Okay, you could extend your right leg along the floor if your space permits. Actually, you can. I'm taking my foot into the wall because the wall's just there. It's not a bad thing to engage your straight leg, down leg against the wall. And then take that belt only into the left hand and take the leg out to the side if you can, extending the leg to a fully straight leg. So to a certain extent, the ilio-psoas is involved in this turning out. It's very interesting. It's like one guy was explaining how different parts of the muscles, as they engage, they work the body in different ways. So it's the same muscle, but working the lower section of the muscle or the upper section of the muscle has quite different effects. So you're turning out your left leg here, keeping both legs moving towards straight legs. Sense of broad across the chest, broad across the front of the pelvis. Both shoulder blades down. Okay, inhaling to center and take hold of the strap with the right hand. So we're only with the right hand now. So I'd like you to try to keep the back of the pelvis on the floor and take the leg to the right. So the idea is to stretch the outer leg and the hip rotator. So these are the antagonists to a certain extent to the iliacus. So we're working, stretching those muscles. So that would be the gluteus medius, side of the thigh, tensor fascia lata. So keeping the back of the pelvis on the floor and taking your left leg across your body, gently engaging here. Breathing, staying connected with the breath. So I'm going to suggest we just breathe as we usually do through the nose. You will come across this method of breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, which is a way of like lengthening out the exhale. But we'll just go with a more yogic style breathing through the nose. Inhale back to center and release. So I'm going to have to change around here because I've got a wall in the way. So I want you to place the bricks onto your right side. Okay. And both feet on the floor to begin with, checking that you're in a straight line, extending your right leg up, but stay soft in the knee to begin with. Take a little bit of time to set yourself up. And then extending the right leg towards the ceiling, opening the back of the right leg. We're engaging the thigh, stretching the muscles on the back of the leg. So these are antagonists in relation to the front of the thigh. And extend your left leg along the floor. Both legs engaged, both legs projecting out, feeling into your experience there. And taking the bow into just the right hand. So you've got some support, hopefully, at your right hip. If you take this, you rotate, externally rotate the right leg out. Connecting with your breath. Remembering here to keep the upper back in contact with the floor, both shoulder blades, releasing your neck. Can carry on engaging both legs. I quite like to rest, if I can, my right elbow down on the floor. So the arm is not hanging into space, a little bit more restful for the arm, shoulder area. So the ilio-psoas is partially responsible for externally rotating the leg. Breathing now. Sense of the back of the pelvis also level on the floor. Come back to center and try and keep the back of the pelvis level on the floor. Switching hands. You just got hold of the belt with your left hand. And then we're drawing the leg, the right leg, across your body and towards your left shoulder. So you should feel quite an intense stretch down the outer edge of your leg. Just see what's happening there. Breathing. If you can, taking your right hand down to the floor, taking the strap just with the left hand. Got this amazing thing, bright blue sky out there. So both hips down, and so we're working the opposite muscle groups, okay? So we're stretching the hip rotators. And on an inhale, back to center, both feet down to the ground, coming back into semi-supine. Rolling to one side. And this is where it might be helpful to have a blanket under the knees. So I'd like us to come into all fours. Okay. Grounding your palms. You can tuck the toes under or not, it's up to you. But we're going to start with a really simple movement, okay? Yeah, so you're going to, there's a wall. Okay, I'm going to just move a bit away from the wall. Okay, so we're going to start off with cat-cow. So as you exhale, you're drawing in the belly, rolling the pelvis back. And as you inhale, rolling the pelvis forwards. So again, we're working into the ilio-psoas here with this pelvic roll. So when the psoas contracts, tightens, it tips the pelvis forwards. So anterior rotation, anteversion of the pelvis. As we exhale, we're rolling the pelvis back. As we inhale, we're rolling the pelvis forwards. We'll do this 5 or 6 times, connecting with the breath. Coming into a more neutral spine now, and then bring your knees together. So I want us to work into engaging a bit more strongly the thighs here. So as we inhale, we reach out, left leg, right arm, exhale, or fours again. Inhale, reach out, left arm, right leg. So you're alternating between the two legs. You can take the gaze forwards on the inhale, exhale. Coming back to all fours, inhale, extending out. Exhale, all fours, bringing the knees fairly close together will help with your balance. Reaching out on the inhale. Exhale to all fours, sometimes called tiger stretch. Sense of axially lengthening. So really sense of lengthening through the whole spine and out into the periphery, out towards your foot, out towards your hand. One more time on each side. Coming back into all fours, and I want you to reach out the left leg and the right arm, and then bend up your left leg. So we're going to do this stretch quite a few times in different ways. Reach back now for the left foot with your right hand, and see if you can gently push against your hand, the left leg against the hand. So working into that thigh area, opening the front of the pelvis is one of the areas we really want to work into with this sequence. Sense of balance there. I suggest you look down. Okay, this is a sense of balance, groundedness through the gaze towards the floor, staying there for a while. This is a more active stretch. Later, we're going to look at this as a more passive stretch, releasing. And knees more or less together. Extend your right leg back, left arm forwards, and then reach back. See if we can take hold of the foot. Breathing there. If we can't take hold of the foot, I think trying with the straps probably too fiddly. So you could just see if you could reach for without necessarily making contact. So it's more active. So we're pushing the right shin back. Your left shoulder's rolling back a little bit, more or less the chest facing the floor, pelvis facing the floor. Working into the front of the right hip. Breathing now. Again, sense of length through your spine, axially lengthening. Breathing, and then exhale, release. And down. We're going to come down into child's pose for a moment. Or if you prefer, just sit back on your feet. Take a pause there. Relax your head. Release your head down. So if you prefer, just sit back onto your feet, softening the shoulders, reconnecting with your breath, and coming into whole body awareness. So coming into like a global, full body awareness, sense of the whole sphere, from the feet, through the arms to the crown of the head. Breathing now. Okay, and on inhale, coming into all fours. And this is where it's going to be helpful to have either 2 cork bricks or 4 foam bricks. Okay, so we're going to do a basic lunge. So we're going to look at this in a couple of, we're going to do the high lunge and the low lunge. This is the low lunge. I'd like you to step your right foot forwards. Okay, so we're going to start off, first of all, as like a more passive sinking down. So this is lengthening ilio-psoas in theory. So it's coming off the front of the head of the femur, up through the front of the body. We'll start off quite gently. It also works into the thigh area, keeping the upper body down, but I'm propping myself up on the bricks on each side of the body, okay? Sense of gently releasing down in a more passive fashion. The arms supporting your upper body weight. Your back toes can be tucked under or they're flat on the floor, up to you. It feels quite different. Now, tucking the toes feels quite different to having the top of the foot on the floor. So you can explore that. The gaze gently going forwards, down, allowing the front of the pelvis to open, to lengthen, broadening across the upper body. So feeling where is the specific sensations of stretch in the body. So yeah, I can really feel this around the front of the pelvis. Okay, and then from there, releasing back for a moment into all fours, switch sides. So again, we'll start off as in a more passive fashion. So the hands underneath your shoulders, the gaze forwards and down. Allow the front of the pelvis to open. Decide if you're going to tuck the toes or not. Keeping it as a sense of lengthening pubic bone to throat area. You can even be up on the fingertips. Breathing into the stretch, sense of releasing with the exhale. Breathing now. And on the next exhale, we're going to release back again into all fours. And then step your right foot again forward. So we're going to do this more dynamically now. So I'd like you to tuck your left toes under and come up a little bit higher. So this will work more down into the thigh area. You should feel. So the right hand is going to be on the right knee, the left hand down by the side. So this enhances the stretch, but we're going to do it dynamically. So as we inhale, I want us to slide the pelvis forwards and reach up. Sense of lengthening from the left knee to the left hand. Exhale, coming back up a bit. So lifting the pelvis, engaging the front leg. Inhale, releasing forwards, long through the front of the body. Exhale, coming out. We'll do that 5 or 6 times. Inhale, lengthening up. So again, we're working into the ilio-psoas, down into the thigh. If you want to intensify the work, you can gently draw the left arm back, taking the gaze up. A couple more times on this side. And then releasing forwards again. All fours. Coming back for a moment, take a pause there, switch sides. Left foot forwards. Tucking your right toes under. So it gives you a little bit more stability, right toes under. Coming up, so we bring the left hand, so just doing a support function, the left hand on the left thigh, right arm down by your side. As you inhale, pelvis forwards, reaching up, lengthening up, and taking the arm back. If You want to go into that a bit more intensively. On the exhale, releasing out, sliding the pelvis forwards. As we know with this movement, it's okay to let your left knee shoot over the left ankle, because we've got weight going back into the right leg. So it's not all going into the left knee. Inhale, opening up the front of the body, sense of lengthening from the right knee to the right hand. Two more times on this side. And releasing down into all fours. I'd like you to drop back onto your heels, either into child's pose or sitting back on your heels, whichever suits you. So you can fully release down into Balasana, or if you want to keep a little bit more stimulation through the body, sitting back onto the heels, the gaze forwards. And being aware of the effect of those first few poses. So this is like a kind of introductory sequence for this practice. Being aware how we've worked the front of the hip, the thigh. So like to remove the blanket if you had one, just put your bricks as well to one side. We're going to come up to standing. So I was trying to get earlier to get the camera, but I didn't chop my head off. So forgive me if it is chopping my head off. We're going to do, so the ilio-psoas, okay, so it's a muscle that I've just described earlier. It runs off the front of the front of the spine, lower vertebra, even into T12, over the front of the pelvis into the inner edge of the thigh bone, femur. Okay, so it's involved in everything. So this guy was pointing out, it's a very difficult muscle to actually just rest it. You know, if you do some harm to it, it's not a muscle you can just rest up, because we're using it for walking, we're using it for folding forwards and so on. We're using it all the time. So we're going to do a little bit of movement now, flexing forwards, coming up. So on an inhale, I'd like to take your arms up, reach up, and then as you exhale, bend your knees and fold into your legs, allowing your body to fold towards the legs. On an inhale, coming up onto the fingertips, gaze forwards with the knees bent. Exhale, fold into your legs. And then with a long back, knees bent, coming all the way up, reaching back up. Exhale, arms down by your side. So I'll just do that one more time. Inhale, reaching up. Exhale, bending the knees, folding over your legs. Inhale, come up onto the fingertips, lengthening through the whole back of the body. Exhale, folding into your legs. Inhale, sweeping up, long spine, bent knees. Exhale, hands down by your side again. So we'll do that 3-4 more times. Inhale, reaching up. Like the initial part of a sun salutation. Exhale, folding into your legs, folding over the legs. Inhale, coming up onto the fingertips, sense of lengthening through the front of the body. Exhale, fold into your legs. Inhale, reaching up, bent knees. Exhale, arms to your side. So we're doing this to lengthen out the back of the body. Okay, inhale, arms up. Exhale, folding into your legs. Inhale onto the fingertips, grounding the feet. Exhale, folding into your legs. Inhale, sweeping up, long body. You can take your arms out to the side one more time. Exhale the arms to your side last time. So inhale, arms sweeping out to the side, sweeping up. Exhale, folding into your legs. Inhale, coming up onto the fingertips. Long through the front of the body. Exhale, fold into your legs. Inhale, sweeping all the way up. Exhale, bring now your hands onto your hips. Okay, so I want you to bring your left foot forwards and your right leg back. So keeping the pelvis facing forwards. So again, this is working into the psoas from the high lunge. So I'd like you to drop your right arm down by your side. We've done this before in the context of low back work. So as we inhale, you take your left knee forwards over the left ankle, reach up, pelvis rotating forwards, looking up. Exhale, straightening the front leg, dropping your right arm. Okay, so it's like coming in and out of warrior lunge. Inhale, pelvis forwards, reaching up, lengthening from the right foot to the right hand. Exhale, coming down. So we'll do that 4 or 5 times. Inhale, reach up. Exhale down. Inhale, last time, reaching up. So I'd like us to stay here. If you want, taking both arms up, coming into the warrior position. You can take the cactus position with the arms. And just see if you can visualize the ilio-psoas. So it's coming off the top of your femur, through the inside edge of your hip area, and then up through the inside edge of your spine. You can feel how it's getting stretched here. Maybe you feel like tying this around the front of the hip. Okay, exhale, releasing the arms down. And carefully step back to the center of your mat. We're going to switch sides. Right foot forwards, left foot back. Same idea. So as we inhale, reaching up, your right hand can be in a supporting function on your right knee. Exhale. Straightening the front leg. On the exhale, reaching up on the left arm. Playing with your distance. So the more flexibility you've got, you may want to go for a longer base. 4 or 5 times. Pelvis facing forwards. Engaging the back heel down. Next time we come up, reaching up. We're going to match up into the cactus position with the warrior, forward warrior position. Or the arms up straight above the head. Gaze slightly up from the horizon, a sense of lengthening through the front of the body. Breathing now. And then release again, releasing the arms down. Come back to the center of your space. Okay, and then I want you to turn. Well, I'm going to turn towards the camera. I'm going to move back a little bit. Hopefully you can see full length here. So another interesting work we can do in terms of working sort of the stability of ilio-psoas. Okay, so thinking about the lower spine, are balancing poses. So when you bring your weight onto one leg, this is supposed to be really beneficial for creating stability, working either side of the body. So we're going to do a couple of standings. So the classic standing pose, Vrikshasana. So I'd like you to bring one of your legs up into up onto the inner thigh. I'm going to use, got the wall there. One in my case. Okay, so we're just going to balance here, choosing a hand position. A sense of working down through the standing leg, really engaging. Okay, so we're externally rotating one of the legs here. So again, the ilio-psoas gets involved with that to a certain extent, one of the rotating rotators, hip rotators. Okay, then maybe taking your arms up or out. Take the gaze towards the horizon. Breathing now. Sense of poise, length through the whole spine, through the whole body, from the ground all the way up to the tips of the fingers or crown of the head. Releasing down, we're going to switch sides. See if you can have a sense of the pelvis level, opening the front of the pelvis. So noticing if your pelvis tips forwards, you can lift the front hip bones. Deciding what you do with your arms. Breathing now. The gaze towards the horizon, a sense of poise. Sense of balance. And length from the floor to the crown to the fingertips. Releasing down. I'm just going to turn to one side. You could stay where you are. Bring your feet together. Hands onto your hips. This is, in a way, more simple. So I need to float your left leg or your right leg, up to you. So the thigh is parallel to the floor. We're just going to poise here. There's a sense of bringing your spine into the upright. So careful we're not leaning back. Pelvis level. I'm balancing on one foot here. Crown lifting, elbows flaring out to the sides. You can open your chest area, also opening the back ribs. Poise there. See if you can keep that straight leg, standing leg straight, and release. And we'll switch sides. Long through the spine, sense of lengthening from the standing leg all the way up to the crown. So we're not leaning back, we're not leaning forwards. Your thigh level to the floor. So we're working this, creating stability in the lower back, pelvis, around the hip joint by doing one-legged balances. Elbows flaring out. Breathing now. Growing the spine. Broad across the chest. And when you're ready, releasing down. Coming for a moment into Tadasana, feet underneath the hips. Closing the eyes. Arms down by your side. Feeling in the mountain pose, feeling yourself in the mountain pose. Sense of connecting with your breath again. And then turning so you're facing the long edge of your mat. Again, we're going to open the back of the body. So I like to take your feet wide. So we're working the back of the body, the front of the body, the back of the body, the front of the body. So coming into the classic pose here, Prasarita Padottanasana, taking the arms out, shoulder height, tipping over your pelvis. You can bend the knees to do this. Fingertips underneath the shoulders, and then allowing yourself to release forwards, possibly straightening the legs, coming into a full forward fold here in standing.
So with this, we've got the benefit of working with gravity, with the upper body, opening the backs of the legs. You can work the thighs, engage the backs of the legs, opening the backs of the legs. Sense of even weight, inner foot, outer foot. Breathing. Checking that you're releasing your neck, keeping your shoulders broad. From there, fingertips walking forwards, hands walking forwards, bringing your feet in, that zigzag fashion, bending the knees, long spine coming up. And then this would be really helpful now to move towards the wall. So I'd like us to take 2 foam bricks, ideally. So it does help to have kind of fairly, rather than cushions, have bricks. And we're going to take the sacrum right to the pelvis right to the wall. I've included this. I'm not quite sure why I've included it. It's just I'm working purely from intuition here. So it's working deeply into the inner thighs. So I suspect indirectly it gets into the iliacus. But I'm doing it mainly because it feels like a really good hip opener and creates space around the pelvis. So I'm putting some bricks also between the feet, or you could put a cork brick to create a little bit more sense of broadening across the front of the pelvis, okay, across the groins. My sacrum, the back of the pelvis, is right into the wall. So you want to wriggle to get into the wall. And then all I'm going to do is rest the forearms onto the inner legs, okay, onto the inner knees. I'm gently allowing gravity to work through the inner legs. So we're going to breathe here. What would be really helpful is some sandbags on the inner legs. It's like nobody has those. But I don't want you to start pressing with the arms because it can generate quite a bit of tension in the body. So just allow your arms to rest, your forearms to rest on the inner legs, and we can trust in using the weight of the arms, a few kilos on each arm, to really surrender the weight of each arm to the leg, to create a little bit of downward pressure on the inner knees. So it does help having the wall here. I mean, you could do it without the wall, but it does help having a wall there in terms of a sense of alignment of the spine in the vertical axis. You can take the head back, the shoulders back, and the pelvis is right back to the wall. So you'll probably feel the lumbar area is not. So we've got the lordosis in the lower spine. So we're not trying to flatten that out. You can gently, very, very gently press the soles of the feet towards the center line, towards the brick or the bricks between the feet. So it's slightly active in the legs. It's not really a yin pose, okay? Because we're working very gently the legs and we're maintaining to keep ourselves in the upright position. So we're doing this with the intention of creating a sense of space in the front of the pelvis and to a certain extent across the pelvic floor. And also we're doing it as a step into the next pose. So I'd like you to release from that now. Bring your legs in and we can move away from the wall now. What we're going to do is extend the legs out
again, a classic shape, posture, Upavista Konasana. So as we know, for some people, it's helpful to sit on a corner of the brick. So you've got the corner of the brick sticking out between the legs, which gives you a little bit more sense of upward lift, and that because we're going to come forward. So again, I want to work into the backs of the legs, engaging the thighs. We're going to work off to one side, okay? So engaging both legs here, turning to the left, or you could turn to your right, it's up to you. I want you to reach up with your inner arm. So in my case, it's the right arm. I'm turning to the left. I'm reaching up with the right arm. I'm going to reach out, keeping both legs engaged. I'm going to reach out and down towards the straight leg. And then the other arm can come along. The left arm can come along. I'm working down to keep the right sitting bone down. I'm engaging both legs. I'm opening up to a certain extent the side of the body here. And stretching the quadratus lumbarum. So it's a muscle that runs off the top of the pelvis into the lower back ribs. So aiming to rotate yourself towards the straight leg. The left leg, shall I say, the one that you're looking at. But you just see where you come to. So I wouldn't suggest using a strap here. So just allowing yourself to release out, keeping the legs engaged. So it is active. We're not doing a yin pose here. Although the upper body can be fairly quiet. Projecting down through the legs. On an inhale, we're going to sweep back up the center. Turning now towards the right leg. In my case, left arm is floating up. I'm reaching out towards the right leg. My right arm is coming up alongside. I'm turning towards the straight leg, the right leg, keeping the left leg engaged. So we're opening up the back of the body. Opening the backs of the legs, engaging the thighs. And releasing up on an inhale. And we're going to, from here, bringing the knees in. So we're going to come down onto the front of the body now. So it might be helpful to bring your blanket back if you're working on a hard floor. So you can place the blanket along the mat and releasing down in onto the belly. So I want us to work now into a sense of engaging the back of the body rather than lengthening the back of the body. We're going to be engaging with the idea of lengthening out psoas, which is at the front of the body, okay, coming forward. So this, we're going to be doing some work based on Shalabhasana. So, okay, so the hands can stay, the head can stay down, can stay forwards, but I'd like you to separate your feet, lengthen out each leg. And then on an inhale, we're going to lift just one leg and lift the chest off the floor. So you're opening out the front of the pelvis and exhale, release down. So the arms are not really doing anything. They're just forwards. And then we'll switch side. Inhale, lifting the chest, lengthening down through your right leg and lifting it away from the floor, and then release. Switching between both sides of the body. We'll do 5 or 6 cycles. 5 or 6 on each side. Inhale, lifting the chest, gaze forwards and down, lengthening down through the legs, and then lifting. So we're emphasizing lengthening out of the pelvis, and then lifting. Working with your breath. As you inhale, you're coming up. As you exhale, you release down. Inhale, coming up. So we're getting in this particular movement, starting to work more into the spine, the erector spina muscles up and down the spine. But there's an intention here to lengthen out of the hip, lift the leg away from the floor. So we're lengthening out the thigh muscles and ilio-psoas. There's an intention there. Okay, and then from here, releasing down, take a pause for a moment in neutral. Like to bring your hands now alongside your chest, elbows tucking in, and then bring your feet in towards each other. So we're going to, again, working around the pelvis, around the hip joint. I'm going to introduce an element of opening the legs here to work around the pelvis differently. So as we inhale, we lift the chest and separate the legs as wide as they'll go. And then as you exhale, come all the way back into the center line and down to the floor. Sometimes called Vimasana. Inhale, lifting, sense of lengthening, but separating your feet as wide as they'll go. Exhale, drawing yourself back into the center line and down. So it's quite strong work for the pelvic area. Pubic bone pressing down, separating the feet. Exhale, down. 5 or 6 cycles. Palms grounding. But we're not pushing through the hands. More just a sense of them the arms being there, the elbows tucked in, a sense of creating a little bit of support for the upper body, but not engaging strongly. Doing the work down in the lower body. Okay, on our next inhale, we're coming into a fourth. Allow you to rest into child's pose. Take a pause there. Reconnect with your breath. It's connecting with your mood. Releasing around the shoulders and the neck. And then once again, coming out into all fours. Down, laying down on the floor. I want you to really lengthen out the front of the body as you come down. So you can even reach back with each leg for a moment. And then again, the arms can be in a fairly, like they're like not doing anything in particular. You could rest the forehead on the hands, for example, if you like. But your elbows wide, your chest stays low to the floor. So we've done this in relation to work around the knee joint. So what we're going to do now is slightly elaborated Shalabhasana. So as we inhale, we lift with just one leg, and then exhale, bend the knee, folding the foot towards its own buttock. And then as you inhale, release out, lengthen and out, and exhale down. Okay, so we'll do that again on the other side. So inhale, lengthening out the right leg. Exhale, folding the right leg in. Inhale, lengthening out.
Exhale down. So we're mobilizing the knee, but what I'm really thinking about here is the hip flexor, lengthening the hip flexor. Inhale, lift. Exhale, fold, lifting the thigh. Inhale, lengthening out. Exhale down. Alternating between the two sides of the body. The upper body can be fairly neutral. Inhale, lift, exhale, fold, try and lift the thigh. Really stretching through the hip flexors into the thigh and down. And alternating between the two sides. So it's 4 parts. Inhale, lift. Exhale, fold. Still lifting. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, down. One more time on each side. And down. There's a mixture of strengthening and mobilizing. Taking a pause there, resting into, we're in prone, resting now. So I'm going to come into a part of the sequence now, which is more passive stretches. So we're going to emphasize stretching the thigh and the front of the pelvis. And you could say there's a sense of progression. So the first one, they should be familiar, should be familiar. It might be helpful to have a bolster. I mean, I've got all the gear here. If you don't have a bolster, just a cushion. And I want you to lie down onto one side and you support your top knee. So I'm resting on my right side and I'm supporting my left one of my left knee. Okay. This is the first position to set up. Okay, so my left knee supported on some bricks or on the bolster. My head supporting into the hand. It's called cat tail because what we're going to do is we're going to take the right leg back. So you're really opening the front of the right hip towards the floor, right leg back, and you reach back for the lower right leg. Okay. So I'm just wondering if that would be better to demonstrate the other way around. I'm just going to do that. I'll do exactly the same side. I'm resting on my right side, supporting my left knee. I'm going to swing. So I want to swing my right leg back and reach back for the right leg. And then what I can do is gently turn the chest towards the ceiling and come into a bit of a twist. Okay, so I'm releasing the back of the body to the floor. The intention is to stretch the left thigh, the right thigh, and the right front hip. It's probably going to emphasize more the thigh than the hip. Okay. You can also stay on your side and do it more like a kind of side stretch. Okay. But you can turn your head and your upper body to the ceiling. So once you've set yourself up, see if you can release into the pose for a minute or so, minute and a half. So just working there in a more passive fashion. Closing the eyes. And softening. Releasing where we can. This pose I offer to students that have trouble with in the knee area. So if they're struggling with the hero's pose, which we're going to come on to, the Virasana, I would offer this as an alternative.
Okay, releasing the lower leg, the right leg. Carefully setting yourself up on the other side. I'm just going to swing round. So the right leg is supported on the bolster. So I'm bringing the right knee at least level to the right hip, if not a little bit higher. So it's almost like it's in front of the belly. And then I'm swinging the left leg back and reaching for the left foot. And then I rest down. So I can stay in the side position, or I can introduce a little bit of twisting. So I go into more like a leg stretch twist. It's quite a quirky position. So you can take it towards more of a push to the upper body. But the point is here is to be stretching the front of the pelvis and the thigh. Breathing there. So we're going to again stay for a minute and a half or so. But here, passively working, as passive as possible. Releasing both legs. Observing the difference between the two sides of the body. As we know, we're typically very asymmetric. This has all sorts of implications in terms of the mobility in the joints on the right side, left side, all the way through the body, shoulder, hip, leg. And then from there, releasing again to coming into some sort of neutral shape for a moment, which could either be onto your belly or onto your back. Breathing, connecting with the body. So from here, so I want us to have a go at the Virasana. So I know that this is a tricky pose for a lot of people. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of it recently, but you're going to need lots of support. So I'm going to use the bolster. We're going to do the half Virasana, so the half hero's pose. So as we know, with Virasana, you're taking one leg back, if it's the half version. The foot just goes straight back. And then you're lowering yourself very slowly onto whatever's behind you, which may well be quite a bit of support, okay? If you've got knee problems, then yeah, I wouldn't do this. It's going to be too much pressure in the knee joint. Okay, so ideally the pelvis on the floor, you rest back. So here the intention is to open up the front of the pelvis, again working into the hip flexors. But this again focuses very strongly on the thigh area. Depending on your body, you may or may not take the arms above your head. And again, we're going to do this passively for a minute and a half or so on each side. Releasing. So see if you can release as deeply as possible. You'll notice this really pulls deeply into the hip joint. And there can be like a holding on in the hip joint, okay? So I'd like you to see if you can release that. So it's helpful to work, as we often say, in a sub-maximal fashion with these yin style poses. So you're not going to your maximum possible stretch. So you work back from that because we want to emphasize sense of resting. So we did a lot of yin poses last week. We focused on the upper body So here we're looking more at the lower body. And again, a sense of kindly peering into, looking into your body. Sense of kindness, being aware of any tightness, which there very well may be in this pose. It's quite normal. It's a very demanding pose on the thighs and on the hip area, as well as the ankle. Again, working with the breath as you exhale, the sense of releasing. And then when you're ready, so I wouldn't recommend just trying to flick the leg out and that comes easily. Just gently come back up and then release the leg out, switch sides. So you fold your other leg back, dropping back into the pose now on the other side, really observing any differences between the two sides of your body. So releasing fully in these poses. So a yin style passive stretch. So this guy that I pointed out to you was talking about, had this image of like a wet noodle. I mean, it doesn't particularly work for me. You think of like, it's not an entirely bad image, but it's a sense of just really soft, releasing the fibers, connective tissue, soft, passive. Allows the stretch to go deeper, following his reasoning. He's suggesting for the deeper stretches a more yin style approach, although he doesn't call it yin yoga. He talks about the wet noodle and the releasing, particularly with the exhales, and then longish holds, 1.5 minutes, to allow the stretch to really penetrate down through the body. So working into the quadriceps here, the front thighs mainly. Obviously, we're opening the front of the body as well, abdominal area. And then from here coming up, so I'd like us to see if we can come into the full Virasana. So it's taking both feet back. I mean, if you want to go now that we're here, if you want to go the full way to intensify a little bit, you can do it with the strap. So you make, if you've got your strap at hand, where you basically make your loop and then you strap, very Iyengar. But it does intensify the stretch into the front of the thighs. So you strap your legs together so they can't separate, because if you don't strap the legs, they will drift, the knees will drift, which will release some of the stretch out the thighs. But if you want to go for a more intense stretch there, try strapping, releasing back. So I'm going to deliberately tuck my tailbone towards the forwards, so lifting the hip bones back. So I'm deliberately retroverting the pelvis there to open out the front of the pelvis even more. And with the arms, again, you can rest them by your side, or depending where you're at with this pose, maybe resting them above the head. I'd like us to stay here for a minute or two, If you can fully relax, you will feel there will be this you'll notice this subtle holding on in the pelvis, which we can work at softening. So this image of the wet noodle. Okay, so really releasing, sense of releasing the muscles, fibers, fascia. Being aware of the sensations in your body. So what does it feel like? Where do you feel it? Do you feel it more in the legs? Do you feel it more in the pelvis? So one thing that can come up here for people is we're also working obviously into the upper body. So there can be a sense of compression in the lower spine. So if that's too intense and you need to raise the floor up, you're into less of a back bend. But with the timings, I'm being fairly intuitive here. A minute or two. I've got no idea precisely how long we've been there, but that's probably enough. Okay, so you could stay longer. I'd like us to come up. I'm aware time is moving on, so coming up carefully. If you got the strap, removing the strap. What I like to do after that particular pose is to open up the backs of the legs, which is what we did at the beginning of the sequence. And then if you've got a bolster or a cushion, or at least something which we're going to place underneath the pelvis, this just feels to me like a bit of a relief. Yeah, after being in the Virasanas, called this the whale pose. So you're allowing your pelvis to be higher than the chest and the legs. So the head position can be a little bit frustrating, as you could place the head on one side, or you could place your chin down. Okay, from there, we're going to come out and we're going to set ourselves up into Shavasana. I've got no idea what time. Oh, yeah, I knew it. The time is getting on. Okay, so it's 20 past the hour. We're going to come into Shavasana. Like it's really got cold here the last couple of weeks. So do make sure you're going to be warm enough, okay? And I'm going to lead into Shavasana. And then we'll end at 1/2 past the hour. Okay, so we'll do a short-ish Shavasana. Do stay longer, okay? If you want to stay longer or even move into meditation, then do take advantage of the time that you've got. When we come down into Shavasana, we're going to support the backs of the legs, support the back of the head. And remembering these 3 adjustments on the spine. So the 3 adjustments, the first one is a sense of lengthening out the waist area, to decompressing the waist area. The second adjustment, a sense of opening between the shoulder blades. So you do a self-embrace and then release the arms to your side or onto your body. You can even bring your hands onto the inner iliac crest. So that's where the iliacus is found. So you might find that we've really worked into that area with this sequence. So it might help to bring the hands there, bring awareness into the inner kind of lower belly area. And then the third adjustment is on the neck. So just gently pushing the crown of the head away from you, keeping a sense of softness in the neck and the jaw and the throat. Elbows out to the side. So just move there through possible approach to working psoas, iliacus, and the thighs, the quadriceps, and working also into the antagonist, which is the back of the body, basically the back of the legs, back of the pelvis, back of the body. Working them independently. So one of these guys was emphasizing the importance of balancing up the two sides of the body, balancing up the front of the body in relation to the back of the body, balancing out one side in relation to the other, to help create a sense of balance in the body, essentially. So it helps to eliminate some pain or difficulties that come as a consequence of those imbalances. So we're working fairly systematically from one side to the other. So it's yoga, the way that we're working in yoga has got this quality of systematically working through the body. And with this sequence, we emphasized mobilizing, strengthening, and then lengthening out those passive stretches at the end. So we're working more like this remedial yoga model that we use. So allow you to come into a whole body awareness, feeling, as it were, the aliveness in your body. The body breathing, sense of having definitely worked the body. Checking in then on any specific areas that might be calling your attention, specific sensations that might not have anything to do with the posture work that you've just had going on. I'm just noticing a little bit of tension in the chest area, a bit of low-key infection going on there in the throat. Or it may be very much connected with the work we've been doing, like the pelvis, lower back, thighs. Enveloping in kindness, whatever's going on. In a sense, it's okay from a deeper, bigger perspective. Everything that happens in the body is okay. What's important is to bring a quality of kindness and then go from there. Bring a sense of kindness, even great kindness, sometimes called maha karuna, great compassion, in relation to our own direct experience. We're practicing kindness right now, right here in this body. And of course, it potentially can spill out into other people. But we start here right now with our own body. And then bringing awareness into a sense of the breath. the in-breath, the out-breath through the nose. And then being aware of this quality of change, impermanence. So being aware that our body is changing, ultimately this body will disintegrate. This sense of letting go into your experience, just as it is now. A sense of kindness and gentleness. So if we can promote a sense of resting and easefulness, which of course we know helps to promote a sense of healing and recharge. So we're encouraging this process of moving from the sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and recuperation phase, this parasympathetic nervous system.